everyone, my name is Adeline Spears and I'm coming to you here from the AWX Home Weather Studio, and today we're not going to be talking about the trouble in the tropics. Instead, we're talking about the trouble in New England, as numerous severe thunderstorms today will be capable of producing a few tornadoes, damaging winds all across that area of the United States. And we cannot forget about your Sunday plans as well. So we're going to be looking at all of this in this AWX weather forecasting video. So let's get into the forecast. So we're starting off with our U.S. hazards map, and this is just going to let you know what all could be standing in the way of your Sunday afternoon and evening plans. And the main issue seems to be this extreme heat that we have been dealing with over and over again the past couple of weeks. And this area in particular, highlighted in red, are areas that are already under that heat advisory, indicating air temperatures will be reaching from about 100 to 105, and maybe even seeing heat indexes getting up to 110 to 112. So this triple digit heat is nothing to be playing around with. So I recommend, if you have outdoor plans this afternoon and evening, you are staying extremely hydrated, taking frequent breaks in air-conditioned buildings or in the shade, and trying to avoid some strenuous activity as well. So these are all just tips to help keep you safe and healthy in this excessive heat. And a little bit further to the north, we're seeing some major flooding issues in portions of southeastern South Dakota, portions of Minnesota, and northern Iowa, as well as we've had relentless rainfall up here that has led to multiple rivers flowing out of their banks, and consequently, unfortunately, flooding nearby towns and communities. So please keep those areas in your thoughts and prayers as they are dealing with this very unfortunate circumstances with this flooding. But we can't stray too far away from the main spotlight today, this rare severe weather setup up in the Northeast. So let's dive straight into that element of today's forecast. We're going to start off with the Storm Prediction Center's Day 1 outlook. And as you can see, we've got that enhanced risk 3 out of 5 present in portions of extreme eastern New York, portions of south central Vermont, the majority of New Hampshire, the majority of north central Massachusetts, and extreme southwestern Maine as well. And this area is going to be forecasted to see numerous severe thunderstorms capable of producing a few tornadoes, damaging winds, and small hail. But we cannot forget about that secondary slight risk 2 out of 5, extending well outside that enhanced risk. And this risk right here is accompanying many large cities that are going to be under fire for similar risks today, just a little bit downplayed. We've got cities like Pittsburgh, Philadelphia, New York City, and Boston under fire for these severe storms today as well. So make sure you are staying very weather aware up here, as this area of the country really does not see severe weather that often. So please let folks know up there, if you know anyone that is in this area, that they are expecting some severe weather today, and they need to go ahead and start planning accordingly and staying weather aware in this afternoon and this evening. So now let's dive a little bit deeper into the categorical threats one by one. And we're starting off with our tornado outlook by the Storm Prediction Center. And we have that little yellow circle right here where we have that 10% threat for seeing tornadoes today. And this is very, very rare. In fact, this is the first time in 6 years we have seen this high of a tornado threat in this portion of the country up here. And again, we can't forget about the surroundings areas where we have that 5 and 2% risk for tornadoes as well. So this is a very, very big deal up here, as this is not a very common risk factor at all. So again, please let people know, if you know anyone up here, that the forecast is looking pretty concerning today, especially on the side of tornadoes. But moving on to wind as well, this is another big issue today, as damaging winds will be possible with all of the supercells or multi-cell storms that pop up, especially in this area right here In red, where we have that 30% chance for seeing damaging winds, we may see these wind gusts getting up into the 80-mile-per-hour range, and even outside in that 15% risk, we could see wind gusts getting up to 70 and 75 miles per hour at times. So that's definitely not a risk you want to ignore today. If you live up here, go ahead and try to bring any objects outdoors that may become flying debris in case you receive some of these damaging to destructive winds. We're talking about patio furniture, plants, pots, all of that. Just go ahead and be safe, proactive, and put them indoors so they don't become flying debris during these storms. But thankfully, hail is not going to be an issue today as we have this widespread 5% risk by the Storm Prediction Center. We're looking at hail probably capping off at about quarter size. Could we see isolated hail bigger? Yes, but it's not very likely as these storms are not going to be big hail producers. Instead, we're looking at the side of tornadoes and wind. And to wrap up this forecasting video, we're going to be taking a super deep dive into the atmospheric side of things and getting into a little bit more technical stuff with this convective setup graphic right here. So the main storm mode that we're looking at today will be supercells, and this is the majority of the storms that will be popping up in that enhanced risk area. We're going to be seeing those supercells begin to fire and begin to rotate and consequently potentially produce tornadoes, but we may be seeing some multicellular clusters popping up on the edge of that enhanced risk, but majority of those will be in that slight and marginal risk today. But now let's shift over to our atmospheric setup, looking at the ingredients that are playing into this event. Starting off with shear, we have got quite the amount of low-level shear today. This is just helping those storms form and spin as soon as these supercells begin to fire off and mature. This is really just helping with the rotation and again, eventually the potential to be producing tornadoes. Next, we're looking at instability. So when we're talking about instability, we're looking at CAPE, convective available potential energy. This is storm energy, storm fuel. This is what helps them fire, keep them going, and keep maturing. And we've got a pretty good amount up here considering the area of the United States we're talking about and the terrain. We're looking at about 2,000 to 3,000 joules per kilogram of CAPE, which is not a lot if you're talking about areas in the deep south or in the plains. For up here in New England, that is a pretty significant amount. And on top of that, we're looking at widespread dew points in the upper 60s to lower 70s, which is again very impressive for this area of the United States. Now, moving on to lift and moisture. Lift is again something that helps storms fire and begin to rotate, and we've got a lot of that in the atmosphere today. Looking at the lifted index, it's pretty impressive. It's right on up there with the shear today. And just a quick stop at moisture. This goes hand in hand with our instability. We've got quite a bit of that where you can look at that through those dew points that are getting up into the 60s and 70s today. Now, shifting over to our convective risks. This is what we have been talking about all along. So tornadoes, it's definitely a notable risk today. Very, very high for this area of the United States. Like I mentioned before, the highest risk in 6 years for parts of New England today. Moving on to hail. Thankfully, like I mentioned prior, this is not a big threat today. Hail size should be capping off at about quarter size maximum. So hail should not be the biggest issue on the table today, but we can't say the same thing for our next wind. Damaging winds, again, are going to be a huge threat today, especially in that enhanced risk where we could be seeing those damaging wind gusts getting up to near 80 miles per hour. This can cause some big problems, talking about downed trees, down limbs, some power outages. So definitely go ahead and prepare ahead of time for that. And last but not least, flooding, which is similar to hail. We placed it at a 2. That's not a big threat today unless if you are in extreme portions of northern Vermont, northern New Hampshire, and getting up into northern Maine as well, where the Weather Prediction Center has placed that area as under a slight risk for excessive rainfall today. those will be seeing more rain bands, less clusters of thunderstorms. But the same thing can be said for areas in the severe threat today. If you get under a supercell or a cluster of storms that just sits on top of you, is stationary, or just producing torrential rainfall, we very well could be seeing some isolated flooding in terms of street flooding, excessive rivers rising quite a bit. But again, not a huge issue today as well. Really, the tornado and the wind threat should be the thing catching your eye. But this is going to be wrapping up this AWX home weather forecasting video. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you're feeling a little bit more prepared after watching this video. Again, please let anyone know who lives up here in the Northeast that they are expecting some significant severe weather, and make sure they are aware of the threats to come. But again, thank you so much for watching this AWX video. Please subscribe so you stay tuned for future forecasts. There will be a lot more coming now that I have quite a bit of free time. Make sure you also follow my X or Twitter at AdelineWX. My Instagram and Facebook handles are Adeline's Weather Watch as well. So all of these socials should help you stay weather aware and stay safe. So have a great rest of your Sunday, and I'll see you soon with more weather forecasts.